Hi, my name is Giselle, and this is how to change one's beliefs based on truths found in Jonah. So, the first step of this process is finding the truths hidden in the book of Jonah. Now, I know that there are many truths in Jonah, but because of time, I'm just going to say a few. The first truth that I found was in chapter 2, verse 2. The truth is telling us that God always listens to our cries and prayers. When Jonah prayed to God in the whale, God answered his prayers and let him out. Also, when Jonah prayed for help with the Ninevites, God gave him courage to preach. The next truth I found was in chapter 2, verse 4. The truth is telling us about how we should always look toward God even when you think that God is mad at us. When Jonah tried to run away, he already knew that God was mad at him and he might not be forgiven, but he knew that he had to do the right thing and that God would be happy with him if he did. The next truth I found was in chapter 2, verse 7, and is talking about how we should always remember God in times of trouble and pray to Him because it will help you. The evidence Jonah gives us is even though Jonah was afraid of the Ninevites, he thought of God and preached the word to them and overcame his fear. The last truth that I'm going to share with you today is also in chapter 2, and it is in verse 10. It tells us that even thinking about little things makes a big difference. When Jonah preached the word to the Ninevites, they all changed their mind on what they believed and worshiped God. That is the end of the first step. Even though we can find so many other truths, I am now going to show you how to change your negative mindset from only the 4 truths I showed you. The first truth is, God is always listening to our prayers. Sometimes people say that God doesn't listen because they can't hear it or see it, but He always is, and He's just waiting for the right time to show it. When Jonah was in the whale, he prayed and hoped that God was listening, and He was. The next truth we are going to use is that we should always look toward God even if we think that God doesn't like us anymore. People say that they can never go back to God, but they can because God always loves you and will forgive you if you repent. When Jonah repented, God forgave him right away. The third truth we are going to use is that we should always pray to God in times of trouble because He will hear it. Some people might say that there is no use of praying because it never helps us. That is not true. Just because you can't see or hear or touch God doesn't mean that He's not there. You have to trust. The evidence that Jonah gives us is when Jonah prayed, he thought God would ignore him because of his sins, but he was actually saved by God from dying. The last truth we can learn from is taking notice that little things can make a big difference. Non-believers could say, I don't have to care about little things because they don't matter in this world. That is totally wrong. If we care about the little things in a Christian life, then who knows what you could do to get people to believe and glorify God. The evidence that Jonah gives us is that when Jonah cared for the people in Nineveh, almost the whole city was turned to face God and worship Him instead of turning their backs on Him. As you can see, there are a whole lot of truths in Jonah, and you can change your behavior from each and every one of them. I hope you learn a lot from this video, and thanks for watching and listening. This was Giselle on how to change one's beliefs based on truths found in Jonah.